Hello, everyone. So yeah, today we're going over all the new features for Webex Calling in Verify, and that's coming out in 16.4. I don't think we've done one of these in a while. So we'll kind of go over all the new features, and then yeah, if you have any questions, then go ahead and feel free to ask. So I'll just start from the top. I guess kind of like first let me log into my lab, and I guess kind of like the big or the flashy new feature is our support or yeah, I'll say our support for the Webex Customer Experience Essentials call queues. And you can actually kind of call this our initial support for the Webex Customer Experience Essential call queues, and that's a lot of syllables. So I'll just call them the Essentials call queues from this point forward. So basically, a little background on this. If you are a user of the Verify Analytics tool and you've been running reports on hunt groups or call queues, you'll know that in like when you're doing a search criteria, you'll see there's a call when you use call queue, and when you go into the drop down list, you'll see a list of all your call queues up until 16. Well, before 16.4, the only call queues in that list were your, I guess we can call them standard call queues or the non essential call queues. And the reason is we go out, and if you go into the org settings, you'll see it. I'll go into the setup, go to organizations, and then there's two parts. We have the CDR processing, which goes out and pulls in the call data from Webex's API, and there's also the sync. And the sync goes out once a day, and it pulls in all of the important information like hunt groups, call queues, users, auto attendants, locations, and there might be more that I'm forgetting. And all of that goes into our database. And from there, when you're looking through the search sets, or whether it's a hunt group or call queue, this is what populates the list. We go out, pull the sync in, and then on the back end, when we're processing data, what helps us populate the fields, like the called queue field in the CDR or the called hunt group field in the CDR, are those same database tables. And so when we go out to Webex's API for their call queues and we pull back all of the data, Webex was not including those essential call queues. They were including the call data for those call queues within the Webex calling data, but they never gave us access to actually see those call queues until recently. So they've updated their API, and they've given us another point we can go to now pull in those call queues alongside your standard call queue. So as of 16.4, the new logic has been released that will pull in those call queues. They'll make them available. It's all going to go into the same table in our database, so it'll all appear in the same menu. You won't have like two separate, like one for like call queues and one for essential call queues. They're all just going into the same drop-down list. So nothing to really change as far as the interface. The call data is still the same. The call data is still the same. You're still going to see the calls going into the call queues. I can show you real quick. If you're new, let's go current week. Do we have call queue data? We should. So yeah, everything will still look the same. You'll still see the call come in. It still, it goes to the, in this case, it goes to the auto attendant. The auto attendant delivers the calls to the call queue, and then you'll still see the call queue, presenting the call to all of the different agents. Just now, if you have an essentials call queue, the call queue name field here will now be populated with your essentials, like here, your essentials call queue. So that'll be available within the system. So now, because it's been made available to us, okay? But yeah, as far as reporting goes, as far as dashboards and widgets, everything else is the same. We'll be having a follow-up webinar. I want to say it's going to be on, I think, January 15th. Let me make sure we have the right date for that one. Let's go down right here. Yeah, January 15th, I'll be doing a webinar on how to build dashboards and for the customer experience essentials queues. It's pretty much the same thing as normal call queues, but we haven't done one of these in a while. So it'll be kind of like an updated webinar that kind of covers how to build dashboards for your call queue. So if you're interested, you make sure to register for that. And then moving on from the call queues, the next feature or the next update 16.4 maybe isn't as flashy as the experience call queues, but it's been mentioned by a couple of our customers. So in 16.3 and in earlier versions, let me bring up a report. I have a sample report here. So in 16.3 with our logic, let me. So okay, going from 16.3 to 16.4, we made a change as to how we calculate the percentage-based values for hunt groups and call queues. So what I mean by that is if we look at our standard either hunt group or call queue report, we have this. So there's a total call count of 436 records with a sequence count of 48. The reason behind that, and if we go back to call history, and going back to my example here, or any of the examples, when a call hits the call queue or hunt group, and when it's presented to the agents, we get more than one record per call. So every time the call is presented to a user or an agent, we get a record. So we have a bunch of 0 duration records, and then in this case, Kennedy answered, and then Kennedy spoke with the caller for 2 minutes and 6 seconds. So all of these calls, when you're filtering on a call queue or hunt group, these little 0 duration records are going to inflate your call count. And so our initial math was taking the call count and then dividing it by the total call count. So in this case, if I can drag my calculator over. So for the answered call count, you have my calculator, bring it back. You have, let's say we have 40 calls divided by 436 times 100 gives us 9.7 or 9.17%, which is your answered call percent right there. So this is how the math has been mathing since the beginning of the analytics. And it's kind of correct. I mean, total call count is great. But it's not really, it's correct, but it's not correct. So in 16.4, we updated the logic that if you are using, or if you're searching for or grouping on a called queue or hunt group, there is a separate set of logic that will be used to determine the total call count. And therefore, it's going to change and kind of fix or improve how those percentages are calculated. So I ran this report today. This was on 16.3. I have the same exact report generated in 16.4. And if we go back, you'll see the same count, the same sequence count of 48, the same answer count of 40. But now, because I'm filtering on a hunt group, or I'm searching for a hunt group, my total call count went from 436 down to 48. So now when we calculate, we're taking the same 48 from here. And now we're going to do 40 divided by 48 because there's 40 answered calls divided by the total call count of 48 times 100. And now you have an answered call percentage of 83.33%. Much more closer to what the real life is, how we can interpret the data in a real life scenario. And then the abandoned call count has always been kind of looking at that sequence count. So this will be it's a much needed and requested improvement on the way the hunt group and call queue stats and percentages are calculated. Super happy with this, with the way it came out. There were a couple different ways that we were throwing around to do this, and this is probably the cleanest and fanciest way. So like I said, if you're filtering or grouping or searching for hunt groups or call queues, they're applying special logic to kind of ignore those 0 duration, not connected call legs. You can still see them in the grouping, like here, you'll still see them in the not connected call counts. But when it comes to like total call counts and stuff like that, we're just ignoring them to kind of improve the percentages here. Okay. All right. And so those are the two big updates. It's worth mentioning prior to 16.4 coming out, there was a small update. It was version 16.3.1. Not sure if everyone caught it or is aware of it. But 16.3.1 also included some updates to the abandoned call logic for Webex calling. So if you are a heavy user of abandoned calls, or you're just looking at abandoned calls, especially with hunt groups and call queues, because most of our users are looking at are really interested in the hunt groups and call queue reporting. We tweaked and kind of updated how we handle what Webex is giving us for the abandoned calls. So if you are looking at abandoned calls, I highly recommend upgrading to the latest version. And then also new or improved for 16.4, we've also updated the licensing, or how it displays. So if we go under the organization and we just do a license check before, we would give you kind of like the total user call count, or not call count, the total user count. And that would be based on the number of users in Control Hub that had either a phone or extension. So in many cases, we get higher or very high, especially if you're syncing with Active Directory, we get really high user counts that would have to be adjusted at the licensing level. But coming down now, we're also including counts for the different licenses too. So like professional, workspace licensing, and then that down here too. So kind of updated and cleaned up how this the license check returns the information. And then kind of housekeeping on if you're upgrading to 16.4, because of some of the changes we're making on the back end, it is going, or the software will require you to re-authenticate, verify with the Webex app. So what you're going to see after running the upgrade, you'll see something. If I can bring up my screenshot, I've already upgraded, so you won't see it, but it's going to look something like this when you're logged in. It's going to say organization server not available, maybe something like verify was not able to establish a connection, or it may give you an error in the log saying you need to reauth. What that means is coming under here, and definitely, if you upgrade, you will need to do this. There's no question about it. If you don't do it, then the processing will go suspended, and then you won't collect data. So after upgrading to 16.4, you log in. Just log back in. Come under the setup drop down here, or hover over it, and then under platforms, go to Webex organizations, and then the quick and easy way is it'll default to the manage tab. Either click on the org name here or the pencil icon here. Both will take you to the same menu. And then once you're in here, click on authorize verify app. If you're logged into your browser with like an account, then it'll pass the credentials to Webex and then spit you out to this page here where it'll generate a new OAuth code. If not, then it'll prompt you to log in with like a Webex user and then generate the token. So then you put the token in here and it'll reauth, and then you're up and running. You can check it by clicking on the checkbox, rerun the organization check. It'll come back. If it's working, it'll come back green here and green here. If it's red, then you're having some sort of connection issue, or the token is invalid. And then also check, go to CDR processing, make sure this is enabled, and my lab is disabled because I don't want it overriding my lab data. But if it is disabled, come in here, turn the toggle on, make sure this is all populated, save and continue. And then when you get here, click activate, and then it'll reactivate processing. If for some reason it's not working, go ahead, give us a shout at support@verify.com. If you do not know what account you used originally, that's really easy to look up. If you go into Control Hub, so it's admin.webex.com, if you have access to it, jump in there, and then when you log in, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our sandbox. And once you log in, in a second, when we get there. Okay, maybe. Okay, once we get in there, on the left-hand side under Management, click on Apps to be taken to the Apps menu, and then at the top, click on the Integrations, like this tab, and then you can search, or you'll see at the top, or search for Verify in the list, and then it will click on the integration. When you do, a little box will come off the right-hand side. And then under integration, or not under, but to the right of integration access, you'll see 3 little dots, and they're really tiny. Click on it, and then click on download. This is going to download a JSON file. Here we go. And then when you open it, When you open it, you can open it in any text editor. So Notepad, Notepad++. I like to use TextPad. When you do, you will see a list of all the users that have that are connected to the Variphy app. In our case, because this is like a lab, we've got a bunch of users, but unless you're running multiple instances of Variphy, your file will look something like this, and then the email address here is the user that you used to connect the first time. So if you want to see who's there, you can see it that way. And then, or if you're setting up a new user for whatever reason, if you're doing that, if you want to set up like a service account or a different account, if you go under management and then users, when you edit the user, I'll show you what you need on the security side. So first of all, it would be recommended to use a user where your password is not going to expire, because when it does expire, you will have to keep generating that token and updating it in Variphy. But when you have the user that you want, if you're going to change it, come down or edit the user or go into the user and next click on the administrator roles and the two roles that we need, which are kind of great out here. You can't, let me try a different user here. Pick on Andrew. If we go down, so the two roles that we require would be under the organizational section. They need to be either full admin or read-only. Read-only is fine. That just gives us access to pulling the information from the sync. And then the second box, even though they're an admin, they also need to have the Webex Calling detailed call history API access box checked. So this box checked and either read-only or full admin plus a password that doesn't expire, and then they're all set. You can use any user. It doesn't matter. We don't care. It's just once that token is generated, then we're up and running. And if you are logging in and trying to give yourself those rights in Control Hub, it will be grayed out that is Webex's security feature. So if you want to use your account, you can, but you'll need someone to come in and either modify your settings if you don't have one of these two options already enabled. So I think that is it. I've kind of covered it at a high level. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. Brian, I'll pass it back to you. Again, I'll re-mention January 15th, we're going to go over, do a workshop on how to build out dashboards for your call queues.